Camera is rolling. This is Rich Dodson. Interview one, take one. Action.
So, what's your name and how long have you been coming to St. Matthew's?
I am Rich Dodson, and I joined St. Matthew's in April of 1999.
Why did you keep coming back to St. Matthew's? What brought you back?
Well, it was kind of coming home because I started out as a youth in the Methodist Church, went into the military after college, traveled the world, and really when I came to Bowie, because my then wife was Presbyterian, we attended Christian Community Presbyterian Church. But when she and I divorced, and I found the reason to do so, my new wife and I moved from the Presbyterian Church to St. Matthew's, and we have been roaringly happy ever since.
You okay?
The church bells were ringing.
Bell, yeah. If that picked it up. Like,
Yeah.
noticeably.
I think that'll be. Why don't we redo that question? But I want to keep the church bells in it because that I can use that for something else later.
Okay.
That'll play to the home audience.
Okay. So, I'm going to ask you again. So, what kept you coming back to St. Matthew's?
It was actually coming back home to the Methodist Church because as a youth, I was a member of the Methodist Church in the town where I grew up in Missouri. Went into the military after college, traveled the world, retired in Bowie, and at that time attended the Christian Community Presbyterian Church because my then wife was Presbyterian. When we divorced and later I met my wife Betty, we were both previously Methodists, so it was coming home to the Methodist Church, and we've been very happy ever since.
How being part of St. Matthew's, how being part of this church brought you closer to Christ?
Well, St. Matthew's in and of itself is a very giving church, and that to me was a drawing card. We have been mission oriented all our lives. St. Matthew's is a church with a local and an international mission orientation, and that seemed to just be to our liking. Since we've been members of this church, we've gotten swept up into many of the missions, such as the Bowie Pantry, the fact that our church is uplifting to the have-nots, and although we've not been on the VEM trips that went to Juarez and to Liberia, nor any of the other international missions, we've been very supportive of those opportunities to give to those that have not.
If you were trying to invite a friend to St. Matthew's, why should they bother coming to St. Matthew's?
Anywhere you go, you're going to run into people who perhaps are not churched. I grew up in a family which ironically was unchurched. My father, because of his occupation, had only 2 days a week that he did not work. That was Wednesday and Sunday. And since he was into training hunting dogs for show, those days were devoted to driving out into the country where he could exercise and train his dogs. He was a religious man. He was a Mason, a Shriner, and a Knights Templar. So clearly a believer in God, but unchurched. My mother was a Christian Scientist, and although she studied her lessons daily, did not feel that she had to go to church in order to be with God. And so when it came to being a Methodist, that was something I did on my own as a teenager. Just decided I needed to go to church. So when I say that coming home to the Methodist Church, that was something that was deeply ingrained in me, but by the same token was not something that I lived with as a result of being in that family. The fact that I now have landed in a church where I can be very active in helping others is someplace that makes me feel quite at home.
You are very involved in the Wednesday morning prayer group of men. Can you tell me why that Wednesday morning prayer group is so important to you?
Well, it's interesting because when I invite somebody to the Wednesday breakfast, I emphasize to them we are not a prayer group. We are not a Bible study. We are, however, a group that starts every meal with prayer. And in that prayer, we are trying to lift up those that need lifting up. It may be because of health, it may be because of problems with their family, or whatever. We just try wherever we can to lift those people up, to include lifting them up by sending them cards and short notes that just say, hey, we lifted you up in prayer and we want you to know that we're there for you. So I think that is an important mission in the church. And as I refer to it to new invitees, it's a place where they can experience a soft landing. They don't come into a hard sell, and it's very, supportive in the sense of building camaraderie, and so they should feel very comfortable. We've had the experience that people that came from either being unchurched or maybe even attending or no longer attending other churches have found it very easy to slip into the St. Matthew's family because they don't feel like they're getting a hard sell or that somebody's pouncing on them to come to church.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you so much for letting us do this again.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Was that?
That was good. Sounded good.
Yep.
All right.